Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Becky McIntyre. I hope I've got all my sound and everything working correctly here so everyone can hear me. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a proud committee member and supporter of the Lois Hole Hospital Women's Society. For those who do not know, the Lois Hole Hospital Women's Society is an organization of people in all ages and stages of life, passionate about raising excellence in women's healthcare and treatment. The Society raises awareness and important funds for a variety of initiatives at the Lois Hole Hospital for Women. While this lecture here is virtual, I want to emphasize that our passion isn't realized only through online events. For example, this past year, we had the opportunity to return to in-person events. The Women's Society was able to celebrate our 5th anniversary with SYC Brewing at an excellent event. And more recently, we hosted a shopping event with Simon's, Fashioning the Future, and raising $25,000 for the Indigenous Cultural Partnership at the Lois Hole Hospital. Since its inception, the Women's Society has been able to raise $850,000 in support of the hospital, supporting equipment such as the Firefly, an upgrade to the Da Vinci surgical robot, and the OBIX perinatal interface system. If you've attended any of our events, donated, visited the website, followed us on social media, anything, thank you so much for supporting the Women's Society and our mission. Now, about tonight. We host these mind and body talks as an inclusive speaker series to engage and stay connected with you, our community. A big thank you to Alberta Blue Cross for their continuous support that allows us to run this informative series. And now please welcome Trish from Alberta Blue Cross.
Thanks, Becky. We are so very pleased to be able to support such a meaningful program, and I'm super excited to hear Dr. Kingston's presentation tonight. So hello, everybody. I'm honored to be here tonight to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 6 territory. We recognize that the City of Edmonton and us, the people here, are beneficiaries of this Peace and Friendship Treaty. Treaty 6 encompasses the traditional territories of numerous Western Canada First Nations, such as Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We are taking this important moment here today to acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
Thank you, Trish. Before we dive into tonight's session, I'll provide a quick overview of the evening and a couple quick housekeeping notes. Tonight, we are honored to have guest speaker, Dr. Dawn Kingston with us. We are hoping that you will come away from this presentation with a feeling educated about women's mental health and the HOPE 3.0 platform. This is a safe space for all to come and have their questions answered. Tonight, we're using Zoom webinar, so each of the panelists will appear as they speak. You will not need to worry about your own video or sound being displayed. If you have a question for our speaker, please type it into the chat box and we'll read it during our Q&A session following the presentation. We're also using the live transcript function, and if you would like to see the available transcript, please enable this on your personal computer. And there will be a survey emailed following this lecture, as we'd love your feedback. Everyone who fills out the survey will be entered to win a draw for a $25 gift card, courtesy of Alberta Blue Cross. And if you'd like to share or watch this session again, this lecture will be posted to the Women's Society YouTube channel tomorrow. And now a little about our presenter. Dr. Dawn Kingston is a professor in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. She's the inaugural holder of the Lois Hole Hospital for Women's Mental Health Cross-Provincial Research Chair in Women's Mental Health. And she's the recipient of the prestigious National New Investigator Award from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. Dr. Kingston's research has focused on improving women's mental health, particularly during the perinatal period. The HOPE team here with us today has developed and evaluated approaches for screening and treating women who struggle with mental health in any stage of life. The team's current research focuses on expanding and evaluating the HOPE platform, a digital mental health platform that supports women to self-manage their emotional well-being in pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, grief and loss, life challenges, or trauma and relationship issues. The platform offers screening, education, and courses for women. Dr. Kingston and our team are leading the field in using e-technology for screening and therapy so that women can get the help whenever they need it, wherever they are. And on a personal and fun note, Dr. Kingston and her family operate and love St. Mary Mead Farm, a small family farm specializing in breeding and raising rare breed heritage sheep. And I hope that she'll show some pictures because they are terribly cute. One last note, Dr. Kingston's book, Your Brain on Pregnancy, will be released in early 2024 by Simon & Schuster. This book targets pregnant women and their partners, providing education and guidance on managing mental health challenges during the perinatal period. All very exciting. And now I am very excited to hand the presenter reins over to Dr. Kingston now.
Thank you very much, Becky. Let me just get organized, share screen, and get us started tonight on this part. Okay. Fantastic. I do want to acknowledge before we get started, the various groups that have supported the HOPE platform since its beginning ideas way back in 2012. And so we do want to acknowledge AWHF, Lois Hole Hospital for Women, Women and Children's Health Research Institute, which actually funded the very first beginning studies that helped us to start to understand what women's needs were when it came to mental health. And so, yes, Becky mentioned that we have a small sheep farm, and I share some pictures because I just think that they increase our happiness hormones and help us to really, sort of in some way let go some of the things that we may struggle with and have some moments of enjoyment. So this is our very first time lambing this year. We've had the farm for almost 2 years now. And these are some of our sheep, and in the last couple of weeks, I think we're up to 18 babies now. So hope that you enjoy some of those pictures. This little one right here is our first. We've called him Alpha. This is his proud mom, Verity. What I was hoping to cover tonight is really to start with the current state of women's mental health in North America. And that sounds very daunting. And the reason I haven't just said Canada is because Canada has so few data on women's mental health. But this state of women's mental health has really undergirded the need for the platform. And I thought that that might be a good starting point. I want to talk about how HOPE answers the call for this state of women's mental health, talk a little bit about the HOPE journey, and then take a peek inside HOPE so that you can see exactly what the platform looks like and what it's intended to do. And I'm really looking forward as well to the feedback and questions. And here on tonight, Nikki Roy is a member of our team as well. And I do want to acknowledge the HOPE team. We've been together since 2012. This is a journey that a core of 4 women have been on. And although I might be the public face of it, the team behind has really been the ones to bring this idea together. And I acknowledge them with all gratitude. I'd love to hear and get you to put in the chat, what brought you here this evening? So there's almost 170 people on this webinar tonight. And if you could just type in the chat, what brought you here? What piqued your interest about the HOPE platform? I'll just give you a second to put some answers in the chat. And then Nikki, maybe you could call out some thoughts when you're ready.
I'd be happy to read anything. I see some thoughts about ways to manage wild perimenopausal mood swings, to learn about issues and resources, struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety, ongoing curiosity for understanding my mental health. It found me. Ooh, I like that. I work in mental health and I thought I might learn some resources for referral.
Mhm.
I'm a senior hoping to get some information about women's mental health at my stage in life.
Mhm.
Struggling with mental health after having my 4-month-old, and I'm trying to do my best to educate myself and to figure how to manage my postpartum anxiety and depression. I'm always learning. I like that. I work for an OBGYN and I'm always looking for more resources for patients struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety. Oh, the focus on women's health through various life experiences, menopause, also mental health.
Mhm.
I work with prenatal and postnatal women. My marriage has fallen apart. My brother died too soon and I'm in a catastrophic fall. All in the month of April. I'm struggling.
Ah,
Very interested in the relationship section of the platform.
mhm.
I am also coping with perimenopausal mood swings. Yes, ma'am. I guess mine are postmenopausal. Women's mental health during menopause.
Mm.
Are there any systemic changes we can discuss to help all women? Sandwich generation stressors.
Yeah.
Family member sent me the link in mental health. I likely have PTSD following my divorce.
Mhm.
Struggling with my mental health and separating from my husband at 71.
Mhm.
I deal with a number of mental health conditions and I'm always looking for new information and or resources to help me to be more functional in my day-to-day life.
Mm.
Mental health in postpartum, loss of mom during COVID, and depression along for my daughter with ongoing mental health throughout her teens and as a new mom.
Mhm.
I'm self-caring myself because I'm too complex for my local Northern Alberta doctor short issues.
Mhm. Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure if you can also see my face during the presentation or
Yes,
not. You can. Okay. Okay,
yes.
that's good. Thank you, Nikki. I'm what I'm reading from the various list of things that Nikki spoke about and the things that you have so bravely put in the chat is that I know that there is very little help for many of the things that you've described: postmenopause, perimenopause, grief and loss, trauma after divorce at 71. These kinds of things I know are often dismissed as life situations that we're just supposed to kind of get over and move on. And that's just not how it happens, is it? It's just not how life works. And so the Hope platform has been designed to really start to acknowledge some of these needs to help women through them. I hope that by having Nikki just read a small section of what the chat entailed, that you get some sense that you are not alone in this. And the platform is really meant to bolster you and to help you also to feel like you are not alone in this situation, the situation you find yourself in. Much of what you have described in the chat is going to be resonated and affirmed when I give you a little bit about what actually is happening in mental health in the US and Canada. And indeed, the state of mental health in Canada and the US reflects what's happening internationally. 1 in 4 women, that's a lot of women, 25% of women at any one time have a mental health problem. And that's just talking about a clinical issue, depression, anxiety, something that we might say is diagnosable by a family physician or a psychologist. I think this is an astounding statistic. By the time Canadians have reached 40 years of age, 1 in 2 have had a mental health issue. We know this this is an actual fact. We've heard it. It's true. Women are twice as likely as men to experience depression. And the rate of mental illness is climbing at an astoundingly high rate among young adult women, particularly 18 to 24-year-old women. As in our work, we've also been, the stats are one thing. In our work, we've also been surprised by how few resources there are. For example, 25% of women, pregnant women, receive mental health treatment despite having 13 regular, at this point, face-to-face visits with their care provider. And this proportion is lower outside of pregnancy. And the wait times, we know, for a publicly funded psychologist in Canada is 6 to 18 months. It's just unheard of. And yet the solutions to this state of affairs are, I'm going to describe them as few, they're non-specific, and they're undelivered. And so what I mean by non-specific are there are vague suggestions of how we should go forward and address, as one person in the chat says, these systemic challenges, and yet they remain undelivered. And I'll give you an example of this. This quote came from a fairly prominent paper that was written in BC, a policy paper called Mainstreaming Women's Mental Health, Building a Canadian Strategy. That sounds terrific. Collectively, this evidence suggests that the mental health needs of women are significantly different from those of men and warrant particular attention. Today, this evidence has not been translated into policy and practice in the mental health system, contributing to treatment inadequacies and less than optimal mental health outcomes for women. This was written more than a decade ago. And in my view, the situation simply has not shifted. These were the recommendations in that prominent Canadian paper. Form a working group, investigate models, do more research, develop research, programming, and policy, create mental health services that would have specific treatment protocols for women, involve women in system strategies. We really cannot do much with these are non-specific ways of talking about a significant, intractable problem. From a research perspective, maternal mental health is garnering deserved attention and has enormous implications on maternal and infant outcomes. We've known that for 25 years. Obstetrical providers should be comfortable with screening, identification, and basic treatment algorithms, including when to refer to specialized services. I couldn't agree more, except obstetrical providers are the first ones to tell us we are not prepared or qualified to do this work. A second quote below, which just was released last week in a paper, one approach to addressing these barriers is to help frontline perinatal clinicians in obstetrics, gynecology, family medicine, pediatric clinicians to provide this care themselves. Again, I couldn't agree more, but the barriers and the challenges of getting frontline providers to be educated and able to do mental health care is daunting for them and not something that all providers feel qualified to move on with. And so I have to borrow this quote from Albert Einstein. At this point, we cannot solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. This was the foundation as we started to think about the HOPE platform. When we first started, and this was WIC refunded, we realized we really needed to understand and target the barriers. So suggesting that frontline providers, physicians, and nurses and whatnot should start screening and helping and treating for mental health problems is just beyond it provides too many barriers. We're faced with too many barriers. Here are some of the barriers that we've discovered in our work and that we just have gathered and acknowledged from across our journey in the mental health system. We know this. Services are inaccessible. There are long wait times. There is little sustainable investment in women's mental health as a specialty, despite over a decade ago understanding that women's mental health warrants special services. There are few or virtually none really self-serve platforms focusing on women apart from the HOPE platform. And many care providers report not having knowledge and skill or services available. We talked about that. And our team calls that Pandora's box. You know, a physician doesn't necessarily want to ask the questions about how a woman is doing emotionally because she doesn't have services or referral pathways to offer. She has nothing to offer, so she doesn't ask the question. And that is, by the way, not a criticism of frontline providers. This is the state of affairs that we are facing when we think about how do we overcome these barriers to ensure that women have mental health care when they need it and that it's affordable, et cetera. Some of the barriers that support or barriers that prevent women from getting mental health care, limited time, right? We're famous for supporting women, others in our lives before ourselves. Financial barriers, therapy is expensive, and we've talked about long wait times for publicly funded mental health care. Fear of judgment, that's not a new one. It's just we need to acknowledge that it still exists. Incorrect assumptions. We've discovered in our work that women assume their symptoms are due to hormones, when in reality, very little of emotional distress is hormonal in nature, whether in perimenopausal, pregnancy, postpartum. We're very quick to say it's hormonal, but the reality is in most cases, it's not. And treatment requires medications. That keeps women back from seeking help. And in the one paper that I talked about that was published last week, they said, you know, physicians feel comfortable giving medications, don't necessarily feel comfortable screening or with seeking or providing psychological care, but medications often comes up. So it's what they feel comfortable offering. And then this cycle that we're in, and again, our team calls this providers don't ask, women don't tell. It is a cycle. Our research showed that over 97% of women, when asked, would honestly say how they were doing, but they're not asked. And that's a barrier to being able to describe how they're doing emotionally. And so in our work too, we found this sort of significant foundation that 3 out of 4 women want to self-manage their mental health. They want a starting point that they can begin, and if they need help, reach out from there. And again, a growing body of international evidence shows that promotion and prevention and early intervention shows positive returns on investment when it comes to mental health. And this is what I believe we're missing in our system, and the HOPE platform offers. It's usually we're intervening at a crisis point, right? Because that's how you get help. There is no help unless you go to Emerge on a Friday night. And then there is help available, but then we're operating within a crisis mode constantly. So the HOPE team came together to ask this very significant question over a decade ago. How can we overcome significant, intractable system problems to create accessible and affordable and acceptable mental health care for women? To give you a little bit of the background of HOPE, we did start our work in the perinatal phase. We started to understand that the focus of mental health in women was postpartum depression. And it didn't include postpartum anxiety. We had any programs in mental health for women tended to be solely for postpartum depression. And yet what we discovered in our work was that 80% of women had symptoms in pregnancy that could have been detected and treated. And so we started thinking about the whole perinatal period, not just postpartum. But what we saw was that the policies and the care was all focused on postpartum. We weren't asking questions in pregnancy about how women were doing. And so we set to work to do a number of randomized controlled trials, which is the strongest level of evidence. And over 4,400 women tested the HOPE platform and were involved in other aspects of our research. Again, what did we learn? Just a few key points. 75% of women want to manage their own emotional health. A significant barrier to getting help was not being asked about mental health by a healthcare provider. And what we discovered is that the HOPE platform reduced symptoms in pregnancy and prevented postpartum depression and anxiety. And we haven't seen anything that's been able to prevent postpartum depression apart from the HOPE platform. But as we journeyed on in our work, we also, through HOPE 1 and 2, because we're now on HOPE 3.0, we also discovered that 5 out of 7 women continue to have symptoms into their child's second year. Our work showed that. And then there was another study in Australia that showed 28 years after women had given birth, a number of them that had had postpartum depression and did not receive help continued to suffer with symptoms. And that really turned our attention to thinking about the women's lives in general, women across the life course, and opening up our thinking beyond the perinatal period. And so I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to HOPE 3.0. It is a free digital mental health platform for women, and it addresses needs across the life course. Our team's passion is to help women who are dealing with life challenges assess and address their current emotional health and provide steps to support them on a path towards healing and thriving. Our platform is a self-directed, evidence-based, research-based approach that will, we'd say to women, put you on a path towards better emotional health, no matter your starting point. HOPE is designed to interrupt the cycle of hidden mental health challenges. And I'm struck when Nikki read the things in the chat, how many of those writings are kept alone and secret and in the heart, rather than being supported by others and being put out in an arena where support and help can be had. The platform provides online evidence-based therapies. So we wanted to make sure that what is in the platform is tested and it works. We don't want women to invest the little time they have in things that just are not effective. We wanted this platform as well to be affordable and accessible, because these are some of the biggest barriers in our current system. And we wanted to support women through their self-management desires. We've got the link for the HOPE platform is throughout the presentation. As I said, it is free. We say it's for ages 18 plus, although we've had users of 16 and over who have found benefit in the platform. There's nothing there that they can't access. The platform can be used alone. It can be used in conjunction with therapy, with a counselor or a therapist, or while waiting for therapy in that long wait period. And we're always generating new content. For example, one of the reasons that I love having Nikki present during our presentations is because then we're really capturing what are the concerns that aren't perhaps represented in the platform, but we're hearing in the chat. And so we are always building new content, whether it's in the form of education, online therapies, and many courses. I wanted to make a distinction here as well, because Hope 1 and 2 were really for the perinatal period, were really designed to address clinical issues. And what I mean by that is someone has had a diagnosis of anxiety or depression or trauma or borderline personality or an eating disorder, something. They've had a diagnosis, or they highly suspect they have a diagnosis. And what we came to understand is that is a proportion of women, but there is a much larger proportion of women who not only struggle with the clinical issues, but who also have what I'm going to call non-clinical. That is struggling with divorce, or struggling with the aftermath of a divorce, struggling with a child who's going through a mental health need and a pregnancy, life issues that are challenges and that we need help to navigate through. And so that can be grief and loss. It can be menopause, anything that really, we might not say hits sort of a clinical diagnosis, but is still important, and it impacts our lives and how we function in our lives. Within the whole platform, we also target the most common causes of emotional distress in women. And so we have discovered that there are 4. You'll notice that hormones are not one of these, as one of the key causes of emotional distress. Previous emotional challenges, if we've had a struggle sometime before in our lives, under the right cocktail of stress and challenge, we may experience emotional challenges again. Relationship distress, that was mentioned a few times in the chat. That can be grief and loss, or partner challenges, especially in transitional phases in our lives, like the perinatal period and menopause. Stress, life stress, and then guilt and perfectionism. Sometimes just the way that we are built makes us a little bit more prone to emotional distress. But again, knowing these things helps us to understand, this is not me. I'm not going crazy. I am having relationship struggles. And we start to narrow down and take our identity out of the picture, to be honest. So let me take you inside the whole platform. I wanted to show you this video. It is on the introductory page. When women come into the Hope platform, this is what you'll see. And I hope that what it does is give you an overview of the platform, but also a feel for how we respect and think about and talk about emotional health within the platform. So just let me get that going here. Welcome to the Hope platform. Hope 3.0 was designed after a decade of research that helped us to understand that 1 in 3 women experiences some form of emotional distress in the course of their lives. Our research also taught us that resources for women to support their emotional health are few and are often too little, too late. Our research also showed us that most women prefer to self-manage their emotional health on their own. Hope 3.0 has been designed to offer you help when you need it, no matter where you live. It offers support in the form of assessments, online courses, and evidence-based information, whether that's related to pregnancy and postpartum, menopause, grief and loss, significant challenges in your life, including childhood and adult trauma, and change and transition. We welcome you to the Hope community. So my hope is that allows you to start to get a flavor for what the Hope platform is really like, and to see the heart of the platform. This is the landing page that I'm showing now. You can see the video below. but let me take you in. Once you're in the Hope platform, you have the option of selecting from a number of life experiences. And so if you're in the midst of pregnancy or postpartum, life challenges and trauma, relationships, menopause, grief and loss are kind of the big areas that we have designed at this time. And look for more. We're always adding more. The Hope experience has 3 pillars to it. We talk about, is this me? That is the pillar of screening questionnaires or assessments. And so it helps us to understand, am I struggling in a significant way or not? Sometimes we don't know. I'll share my own personal experience with grief and loss. I still am struggling with this over my mom's passing 4 years ago. And I remember I'm a clinical counselor as well as, a member of the Hope team. And with all of the research that we have done, I remember a week later visiting a pastor and saying, I don't know how to do this. I do not know how to grieve. I do not know whether I'm okay or whether I'm not okay. And you might think, oh, well, you've got all this knowledge. But when you're in that situation, you are the one experiencing deep emotional challenges and stress, you can't understand how you are navigating through this, whether you're okay, whether you are needing some additional help, whether you're navigating this well, whether what you're experiencing is normal, etc. So screening questionnaires help us to understand where we're at. It's not a diagnosis, but it's important because it helps us to understand, okay, I'm at a significant level of anxiety. I'm not going crazy. This is real. This is real. The Hope experience, the second platform is, what can I do? That's the part that offers online therapies. It offers mini courses as well. And then, can you tell me more? That's a bank of information that we are continuing to build. So each one of these areas, pregnancy, postpartum, life challenges, etc., has all of these 3 pillars. I wanted to give you some examples. So for this one is life challenges and trauma. You can see that it starts with a video which introduces you to that area and helps you to identify, is this the right area of the platform for me? And again, then you have options. Is this me? What can I do? Can you tell me more? And each of those pillars is designed specifically for that life experience. Is this me? I wanted to take you inside that particular pillar. You can choose to do any or all of these questionnaires. This particular one is in the pregnancy section. These are areas that are common in pregnancy: anxiety, depression, a borderline personality, obsessive compulsive disorder, and eating disorders often bubble up in the midst of pregnancy. And so these are questionnaires that are validated, and they belong under the pregnancy section because they're important in that area. When you do a questionnaire, you get the results right away. You get a sense of where you are on the scale from low to high. And we do give a score as well. And then we also provide some next steps for you. And so, for example, we have a video that describes, well, what do I do with this information? How do I know when I need to reach outside of the platform for help? I thought I would actually play that one as well if we've got time, because it'll give you, and I may only do part of it, but let me give you an idea about what this is about.
How do you know if you need to reach out for help? One of the main confusions that women experience is whether what they're experiencing is normal or not normal, especially in the midst of a transition like pregnancy, postpartum, and menopause. Hope 3.0 offers you several assessments that will help you to understand your level of distress. Generally, we classify that as mild, moderate, and severe. In general, if you are experiencing mild distress, anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms, loss and grief, you can work through the HOPE 3.0 platform and find effective relief. If your assessment reveals that you have moderate level distress, you may choose to work through the HOPE 3.0 platform and get extra support as well in the form of a family doctor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. If you're experiencing severe symptoms, the best option for you is to get outside help as well as work through the HOPE 3.0 platform. Extra help may be in the form of a family doctor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. At a severe level of distress, what you'll notice is that it's hard to just make it through the end of the day. You're not able to function in the day. You're not able to manage your daily responsibilities. And you experience a lot of guilt and shame in response to that. This is the point when you can't function anymore in your day, when you do want to reach out for additional help. As you go through the HOPE 3.0 platform, we'll help you to understand other forms of help that will be valuable for you.
So although the HOPE platform is self-contained and self-managing, we have tried to identify areas where sort of personal touches might be valuable, like in discussing when is it time to get outside help. And so we are always looking for feedback on how can we do better in those areas in the platform as well. The what can I do part, that pillar again offers some evidence-based courses. So cognitive behavior therapy and interpersonal therapy are two forms of therapy that if you were to go to a counselor, you may work through things with them using these kinds of therapy. And we have tailor-made them for each particular life experience. So for example, in the grief and loss, the cognitive behavior therapy work that you'll do is specifically targeted to grief and loss, and as well as for the interpersonal. Just as a note, cognitive behavior therapy is one, if you've ever done counseling, it's the stuff that helps you to change your beliefs and your thinking. Interpersonal therapy is a form of therapy that helps us to think differently, or it helps us to change sort of the way we show up in our relationships, helps us with our relationships, our identity within relationships and with loss situations. This is just a screenshot of what it looks like inside one of the therapies. And so there are several modules and videos as well. And again, under the relationship section, you can see a cognitive behavior therapy for relationships, a different interpersonal psychotherapy for relationships, and each one in here helps us to understand which one might be a good fit for us if we're struggling with relationships. We have mini courses as well under the relationships section, and these are sort of homegrown 3, 4, 5 module courses. I didn't know if at this point I would have time to actually demonstrate the whole platform, if I should go into a link. So it's 7:47. Would that be valuable to people if I actually just went inside the link and kind of navigated through it a little bit? Would that be valuable?
Just gonna look on the chat.
Okay, thank
Looks
you.
like you're getting a thumbs up.
Okay, let's do that then. So let's flip into the platform, hopefully. Oh, lovely, it worked. Okay, the HOPE platform, here's the video that we talked about. Select a life experience to explore.
Dr. Kingston, we can't, I'm not sure if it's just me, but we can't see the platform. We can show just your slide.
Okay, so maybe I need to, okay, let's see what I can do about that. Let's see. What are you seeing now?
Just your PowerPoint window. So you may have to end your screen share and then restart and restart the screen share to share the other window that you're working in.
Okay, let's try that then. So, got it. We're going to get there. It's all going to be okay. So new share, click that. Okay, I see. Hopefully we can get back to the presentation, but we'll just deal with that later. How's that? Okay, how's
Not to
that?
worry.
Oh,
Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
oh, amazing. Good, good, good. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay. So there is the main page. You can see that we cycle through the life course. We're trying to make sure that we're focusing on issues across women's lives. There's the video, the life experience that you can choose, pregnancy, postpartum, life challenges, etc. And then the hope experience. So let's pick a life experience. Menopause was mentioned a few times, so let's go there. In the menopause section, there'll be a video that talks about menopause in general, some of the struggles. Is this area right for you? What you can expect from the platform. Under here, the Is This Me? These are the screening tools we talked about. So we can go in here, and these are some of the things that bubble up in menopause. If I go into the anxiety one, I'll show you how this works. There's the video we learned about reaching out for help. And underneath here starts, we're starting the anxiety questionnaire. So I'll just do it so you can see feeling nervous, anxious, on edge several days. Not being able to control or stop worrying, let's say nearly every day. Worrying too much about different things. I'll just whip through this. It's not a very long questionnaire, but it'll give you an idea. You can see our bar up here. We're already halfway through. Let's say we have trouble relaxing more than half the days. And again, this is a validated questionnaire. Being so restless that it's hard to sit still, let's say nearly every day. Becoming easily annoyed or irritable, several days. Again, we're almost there. Feeling afraid as if something awful might happen, say nearly every day. If you checked any problems, how difficult have they made it for you to do your work, take care of things at home, get along with other people? This is that, how well am I functioning as a result of this? And I'm going to say very difficult. And when I say next, there's these are my results. And then over here, further information, it sort of starts to tell you, okay, are you concerned about your level of anxiety? Where can you go from here, and additional resources? So let's zip maybe into life challenges and trauma at this point. We've done a screening. Again, there's a video that talks about when things happen early in our lives, or sometimes things happen, like, I'm going to use the example again of a divorce, a lady that talked about PTSD after divorce, absolutely possible. And so this talks about what is trauma, what are the effects of trauma in our lives. And I think PTSD is a clinical diagnosis, but we can have trauma that does not reach a level necessarily of PTSD, but is still trauma and impacts our lives. And so the definition of trauma that is commonly used in trauma circles is something that has happened to us, but that continues to affect us on a daily basis, either because it's affecting the way we think, our identity, the way we socialize or cope in our relationships, any number of impacts. So within that life challenges and trauma section, again, there are screening questions. What can I do? And here we've got cognitive behavior therapy for life challenges, interpersonal therapy, and a mini course for challenges and trauma. If I go under the Can You Tell Me More, you can start to see some articles that can address trauma. So it builds out your information, including how do I prepare to talk to my doctor about this. So let's go back up here again. That kind of takes us through a few of those areas. We do have a crisis line that you can connect in with, a little bit about hope, the platform, and then some of the research that we're doing. So how are we doing for, I don't want to run over our time. I'm just going to check in here. I think probably, are there particular areas in the platform that you would like me to pop into at this point with that sort of general overview? Nikki, anything in the chat coming up about that?
I'm just having a look right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is this an app or just desktop?
It's desktop. It's I mean, it can be on your phone as well. We've designed it to be both computer and iPad and phone, but it is not something you can go to the app store and buy. So it is a link that you access. The reason it's not an app is because it's very, very expensive to get things moved from what it is currently into an app. And it just hasn't been a priority from a funding standpoint. Yeah, it's very, very expensive. We've looked at, you know, kind of explored that, looked at it, etc. But yeah.
We're being asked if it's only in English.
Presently it is. We have been exploring other ways of getting us parts of the platform at least translated. And currently, some of our work that we're doing is with immigrant women, where we have team members who are interviewing immigrant women, new immigrant ladies, showing them the platform, asking them, you know, is it on par? And then we can understand what additional things do they need. And then we can start a translation process. So that's ahead for us.
Okay, we're being asked about life challenges and trauma.
To look in. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I'm wondering if the participant would want to see life challenges and trauma.
Okay, let's go there. Okay, so video, do you want me to play the video? Should I do that? Give you an overview?
I'm just waiting.
Life challenges can blindside us and leave us feeling scarred. Sometimes life challenges can also traumatize us. When I speak of trauma, I'm speaking of things that happen to us as children or as adults, but things that have happened to us in the past but continue to influence us and affect our lives in the present. These effects seep into our relationships, how we think, how we act, how we feel, and how we see ourselves. In this section, you'll find assessment tools that will help you to understand how these past experiences in childhood or adulthood influence you today, how our past circumstances affect us socially, cognitively, emotionally, and physically. You'll find help to resolve and lessen the effects of past circumstances on your life today. And you'll find articles on trauma and how it influences our neurobiology.
And then let's see, under the where I think I did show this one in the slides, but life challenges, cognitive behavior therapy, interpersonal psychotherapy. I can go into one of those, for example, and just give you an idea. Yeah. So it talks about what increases our risk of depression and anxiety during life challenges, and then starts to take us through some of the topics under there would be relationships and attachment in life challenges. How do I communicate during life's challenges? Interpersonal relationships, disputes with others in life challenges, role transitions, grief and loss that we often experience as part of trauma, and then a toolkit. So we also have various profiles that we talk about throughout. So we have stories that also can help us to understand that do we see ourselves in that experience as well.
Is that helpful to the participant? There's a bit to get through here.
Okay.
So what would be the difference between relationship and grief and loss part of the platform? I feel I'm part of both. No longer in a relationship, but I suppose grieving a lost marriage.
So you don't have to just go to one area in the platform, and we wanted to make it, and that's an excellent question, because the relationship part really probably is more focused on how do I work through conflict and challenges in an existing relationship. Grief and loss would be grieving the loss of that relationship. So and they often do blend together, don't they? Because when we lose a relationship or we get divorced, for example, then we're often into a conflict situation with a partner as well. So both areas of the platform can be valuable. I think I would start with the need that is bubbling to the surface at this particular time. So if you can identify your feelings as loss, then I would start there. Loss is the personal journey, right? The conflict management part is the external part of navigating that relationship, but the loss part is the deeply intimate story of what that loss means to us. Is that helpful?
I think so.
Okay.
And I think you've tackled this in a way, but we're being asked, what if we don't know what our initial issues are?
Yep.
Could be PTSD, grief and loss, anxiety, or depression,
Yep.
as have experienced all. So I think you just spoke about that, didn't you?
Yeah, you can. I think when you pop into each of those main areas, the video kind of helps you to figure out, okay, does this resonate with me right now as my main challenge? I always, when I think about complex situations, and when I mean complex, most of life is complex, sides of significant life challenges have grief and loss, anxiety, depression, relationship challenges, conflict. How do I see myself in the midst of this? Confidence hits. It's like a ball of yarn. And our job at this one particular time is to just take one strand of that yarn out and focus on that. And so if your most felt need is the loss in the midst of this, pull out the loss piece and work through that. If a couple of modules in or a couple of bits in, you think, okay, I think I'm ready to go on to maybe the conflict part, or maybe that part is starting to bang away. Your partner is starting to make waves, for example, then flip over to that area. So you don't have to just stay and finish one area to the end. You can move around and be fluid as your need dictates. We really wanted that to be part of the platform, understanding that circumstances are not in pure pillars. We've designed it that way in a sense, but it's want flexibility to go through. Nikki, do you want to comment in that? Because that was such a part of the heart of this platform. Do you want to comment?
Well, designing a platform that could address the multi-layers of women's needs was really a priority for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to find ways, creative ways, to deliver a lot of information that would, you touched on the word, overlap, that would overlap different areas for women, because women don't navigate life in little glass jars. We bump and grind and have issues pop up all over the place for us. And I think because of our many responsibilities, we tend to make sure we get the care we need for the ones we're caring for. But this allows women to go in on their own time and get some care for themselves without locking them into a certain pathway.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Nikki. That was excellent. And in Hope 1 and 2.0, women were more locked in. And so we wanted to kind of bust out of that. I think about our own personal experiences, just even around the passing of my mom that I talked about 4 years ago. There's a deeply intimate grief and loss piece for me. There's a difficult relationship with a sister, and there's a changed relationship with the family dynamic with dad now. And so, that's just a very personal example of really 3 separate pieces, and there are more to that, what we just put under grief and loss, right?
Well, I have my personal favorite question of the evening. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Do we have the opportunity to speak one-on-one with a professional individual through the website?
Yeah. So in Hope 1 and 2.0, we had we had a coach. Nikki was actually the coach for the platform. And in order to be able to sort of take the platform and take it outside of Alberta and spread it and scale it and do what we wanted to do with it, we ran into significant privacy risk issues, which meant that to be able to collect personal information and connect women to a coach, for example, was not possible. So what we ended up doing is, Nikki, just remind me because I'm having a brain thing. Do we have a coach's question piece?
No, we do not.
Okay.
What we did our best to do in order to mitigate this change for Hope 3.0 was we tried to keep all our content very personal, both in tone and in writing style. And we also made stories. Each pathway in Hope 3.0 contains a story that directly speaks about perimenopause, postmenopause, menopause in general, perinatal, postnatal, life challenges and trauma. And the women can follow that individual story, and it's not a real person that they're reading about, but it's a compilation of all the discussions and the material we've read and people we've spoken to, and we've kind of consolidated that into a story that talks about this very personal experience from this woman's perspective. And you said earlier, we hope that women can feel like something resonates in that story with them. So that was our best way to manage the issue of maintaining privacy and not collecting any data.
Yeah.
I hope I answered that thoroughly enough.
Yeah, that was great, Nikki. It was a real trade-off, and it was one that we sort of went kicking and screaming down that road.
Yeah, I miss speaking with women. I really do. Back to some questions. There was one early on.
Should I get out of this, Nikki, and maybe go back to the presentation? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have more left on the presentation?
No, it's just the how to contact us and etc.
Okay. Okay.
Pull that out.
I think I had somebody earlier who asked about a spiritual encounter. Yep, there she is.
Okay.
So now I'm not sure what she's referring to here. It just says spiritual encounter.
Okay, I'm wondering if the participant
Maybe that person could just
elaborate.
fill me in a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good if you leave your contact info up on the
okay.
screen. And then another participant. I just whipped by. I am an RN and currently dealing with my own birth trauma and
Mhm.
resulting postpartum depression after baby number 4. Baby just turned 1 and I still feel disconnected with her. I
Yeah.
love her and care for her, but feel like she's a bonus baby. Like I'm just going through the motions, caring for my sister or girlfriend's baby, while
Yeah.
my brain mindset is still sitting on the birth ball trying to get myself into labor a year ago.
Mhm.
Mm,
There, I've got contact information here. I do have colleagues that can work with, that do specialized work in birth trauma, if that's useful. And I'd be happy to connect you to them. So feel free to reach out to me. The phone number, you can text on that as well, or email me through the university email. That is not uncommon for women to go through birth trauma and still at a year, if they have not received help or haven't had the opportunity to get some help, to still be experiencing that at a year. The marvelous thing about trauma, whether it's birth trauma or trauma as a child, trauma from divorce, trauma from a job loss, from these kinds of things, is that we know so much more now about the neurobiology. And so
yes.
when I help women with trauma, I do not do talking therapy. It just doesn't cut it, because the trauma resides deep inside our nervous system and in our brain. And we cannot process it in our thinking, by talking about it and thinking about it. It goes much deeper. And that's often why, even though we might talk about it, we feel like we don't get resolution. And so please feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to help you to get where you need to go on that.
Oh, that's a good suggestion, Dawn.
Yeah.
I know I missed one earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got her. Oh, coming off as a workaholic.
Mm. Hmm. So, we talked about perfectionism,
Uh,
guilt and perfectionism being one of the four most common contributors to emotional distress and whatnot, and just life dissatisfaction. And so my thinking around workaholism is really, I would start to go to what is driving me in this way, because working excessive hours and working very hard is just the outward manifestation of something that's going on inside, that's really leading us to have that unhealthy pattern in our lives. And it can be anything. I mean, women that I've worked with can be anything back to sort of cultural expectations as a child, worth being very tied into the success at work or being successful, not getting validation or approval unless you brought home that A, for example. So there's lots of sort of backstory generally. Workaholism, I'm absolutely brain dead tonight at this point, is is not that is not the problem in my estimation. That's just the outcome of, and it has can create problems in our relationships, our lives, our families, our life satisfaction. But most often there's something sort of deep underneath there. And again, that's where the neurobiology and using some of these therapies that really target our neurobiology are useful. There's some really good books and authors who have blown this apart. Stephen Porges, Porges, is one. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
One of my favorites.
Bessel van der Kolk.
Yeah.
Who else is really Dana? Oh, I can't remember her name. Dana, she's the vagal theory, but if you find Stephen Porges, you will find her. Dan Siegel, Siegel, also excellent, and has a number of really nice YouTube videos as well. So these are just a couple of sort of names, big names in the neurobiology field that are starting to help us to understand that beyond talking therapy, there are effective means of helping us to take issues that have affected our nervous system and carry forward so that we start to regulate our neurobiology. That's a whole big thing. I love it. It's cutting edge, and it's really lovely stuff. Really helpful.
I'm just over in the question and answer section.
Nikki, I just want to double check whether, was it Brianna that was going to manage questions, whether we want to flip over or
Yeah, I mean, Nikki's doing great, but
okay, carry on.
Brianna, I don't want to take over your work either.
No, it's good. You go ahead, Nikki. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't read these. Just one sec. So hope for Parkinson's and the emotional issues with that.
Okay. So is this around personally having Parkinson's or having a loved one, being a caregiver for someone with Parkinson's? Can that person pop in and just elaborate on that?
Okay, maybe we'll come back to that person when we see her respond.
Okay. I write that down though, because the part of the platform that we do need to continue to build out on is the caregiver part as well, whether it's a spouse that has dementia, a parent. Nikki, you have very personal experience with that. You know, that the loss and grief around that, and just sort of the exhaustion and whatnot. So if we're on the right track there, or what do we need to help? So that's good, Nikki. Thanks for keeping an eye on that. I'm just writing that down too.
Okay, I have a 3-part installation from one participant. She had a full burnout. I had to get help to reread and the Bible to reread. And the Bible was the start of my recovery. I lost my internal filter. Yeah. My emotions are now like a small child. I'm so lost as a 55-year-old local superintendent at Canada Post.
Okay. So I'm not sure what the is that an ask for help that, you know, to help me to find to connect you with some help? Is it, are you thinking about, and maybe you can pop this into the chat again, are you thinking about, you know, how can the platform help this, or what I just need to have a little bit more about what you need.
I'm just typing that out now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just
I have a couple questions for you, and I'll selfishly chime in here if that's okay while we wait for a response. Yeah. I guess my first question, and you may have covered this in the very beginning, I missed the very beginning of the discussion, but I was wondering, you know, with the questions around burnout, Is this something that you're looking at potentially expanding the resources towards? Because I know that burnout is so hot right now, and something that we can probably all use resources with. It's like, it's kind of, I guess, what you were mentioning about like life transitions and stages versus like a diagnosis. So yeah, I'm just wondering what other areas you're expanding into.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, Brianna. And in terms of the areas, I think it's these kind of forums that help us to understand, we're putting our ear to the ground around what we need to go, where we need to expand into. So burnout is excellent. Thank you for bringing that, both of you, for bringing this to our attention. It's an area that we're aware of. We just haven't built it. And then also the caregiver piece. And so I'll mention that as well, services, resources for caregivers. And the third one, and I'm not sure whether this is where the Parkinson comment is going or not, but the other piece that is also on our hearts and minds is walking through a new diagnosis, or walking through a diagnosis, and whether that's cancer or something very chronic, an illness that's very chronic, and how we actually manage that. Again, personal experience, with all of the sort of mental health knowledge that I have, had a diagnosis of cancer 2 years ago now. And it was striking to me how little of that journey really focused on how you're coping with a diagnosis, prognosis, information, just the whole emotional part of it was really absent from a system perspective. Yeah. So I think, Brianna, burnout, caregiver, resources, new diagnoses. What else is coming up for you, Brianna, if anything?
Well, there was a question here that I think kind of relates, is the what section of the site would you recommend for someone dealing with compassion fatigue? And I feel like compassion fatigue is very similar to caregiver burnout in some ways, depending on the cause. But I'm excited to hear about the caregiver support resources and navigating chronic illnesses. That was going to be my curiosity when you talk about neurobiology and trauma, but then we also look at like increasing numbers of dementia and things like that. And are there resources that we could, or like, is that an area that may be developed? I know it's tricky for people with dementia and things like that to access resources for many reasons, but that was another thing that came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's excellent. So just let me pick your brain, Brianna, when you think about caregivers, dementia, what are the needs do you have a practice, Brianna? I'm presuming you do.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I do. Yeah.
what do you see in your practice? Can you help us to understand
Yeah.
that?
So, I mean, I think with caregivers specifically, I think there's twofold. It's one, acknowledging that these individuals may need help with their mental health and their emotional well-being, because I think that it's like, well, no, it's just expected that I'm going to care for my spouse with this neurodegenerative disorder or their dementia or what have you, but they don't think of caring for themselves. And we talk about self-care, bubble baths and pedicures, but we don't really like talk about caring for our emotions. And so maybe some of it is like public health education, as far as like, this is something that it could be an issue that we need to educate the public that they can access. And then as far as caregiver support, like, you may need it. Did you know? Right? Like, and then also, I mean, I think the biggest limitation is time and finances, right? And so that's what's and those are the same limiters that you cited for basically women's health overall, right? Is that we're taking care of so many other people. How do we have time to take care of ourselves? And then the financial burden, the cost of care homes and things like that for some people is not accessible. And so they're having a hard time putting their resources into caring for their emotions, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you're spot on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mhm.
There's a bunch more questions coming in, points about burnout. I think, oh, the question about Parkinson's was clarified here. So one was about, okay, this individual had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and so they were having lots of anxiety, depression about that. So I think that kind of fits into that, like navigating a chronic illness, but also accessing the anxiety, depression resources.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that in the chat. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's also some interesting caregiver questions about parents or caregivers to folks with mental health issues. So I'm not sure if this is bipolar disorder or borderline personality, but one of those, and then schizophrenia, and just unknown, like how to help that individual, but also like, you know, it's affecting this person's relationship with their partner, and where would they start with resources.
Okay. Okay. So I do think, you know, if, you know, the relationship part is useful for that. I think that though that area we can really, okay, and grief and loss will be part of that as well, right? The loss of relationship in the midst of someone who is not able to respond or not, or who has changed. I'll say that, who has changed perhaps through the course of the relationship. So I think grief and loss can be useful as well. But what I'm also taking from that for us is the need to sort of think about that as a separate section under caregiving, you know, caregiving for someone who's struggling with emotional health or who has a degenerative disease and is shifting and changing. And yeah, I hope that's helpful. So I think relationship and grief and loss are starting points perhaps for that individual, but also I am taking that seriously and about a development part for the platform. Yeah.
And I just want to thank everyone for their vulnerability in these shares. And thank you, Dr. Kingston, for your vulnerability with your shares. And I think that opens up the space as a safe, you know, discussion. So thanks to all of you who are sharing your experiences.
One of the things that we have, thank you for that, Brianna. One of the things that we've batted around quite a bit, and maybe this would be a good spot for some feedback in the chat, is, you know, kind of having some kind of a sort of a link to hope, but not inside the platform, but sort of hope participants that we link on sort of regularly in terms of just a coming together for a bit of mutual support or whatever. And maybe that's by topic, you know what I mean, that we would host sort of just a sort of coffee with the Hope team around anybody that's working through a grief and loss, or coffee with the Hope team around caregiver burden, that kind of thing. Because within the composite of our team, we have pretty much people that cover all the experiences that we have talked about this evening, really. Any feedback on that? Nikki, do you want to pop in there at all? This is something that has really been on our mind.
Yeah, I find it a very intriguing idea. I would love to have that kind of space available for women to pop on. And of course, to have a safe space to talk about things about which they might not have a space to talk about elsewhere. So I'm all for the idea. I think too, the responsibility to be able to support someone who may be in crisis is an issue. And of course, the idea of being able to have a coffee with the Hope team space appeals to me, because then we're hearing from women directly. And just like this experience here this evening, we can recalibrate and pivot. We've done lots of that in the last 10 years, haven't we, Dawn?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it gives us an opportunity to really read the room,
Mhm.
to find ways to help women.
And that was actually something I had another sort of nerdy research question about. It was more towards are you able, and again, I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning. I'm not sure if you answered this, but like, are you able to use how folks navigate the site, obviously within like the bounds of confidentiality and whatnot, but are we able to track either like prevalence as far as like where scorings, like I think that was like the PHQ-9 that you went through, like with that questionnaire, like, are we
Yes.
able to kind of track either like severity and things like that, responses, and or how folks are navigating the site, and then potentially like send follow-up surveys, like how are you at like the 6 month, like, is that part of your research as well? I apologize if I
No.
missed that, but
Well, Brand, it's excellent. So in Hope 1 and 2.0, the platform was actually a research platform. People came in, there was
okay.
a consent to sign, and we evaluated, and we saved all the data from the PHQs and whatnot. So we did all of that. And it doesn't end with Hope 3.0. It's just we're doing it differently because it was a barrier to people to get into the Hope platform if they had to be part of the research project. And so what we wanted to do is take that off, make this widely available. And then what we'll do, and what we're in the process of doing, is we'll put research questionnaires in. And so it's like we're helicoptering into the platform. And so, for example, the menopause therapy, we would say, thank you for joining this. If you're interested in being part of a research study on this, here's what we would ask. We're looking for, 2 questionnaires, 20 minutes of time, that kind of thing. So we're helicoptering in to test the bits. Before we were testing the whole platform. And then we had, ethics and everything to collect data. So this way we're just testing pieces of it. Yeah. Okay. So it's a really good question. And then yes, the data, the screening questionnaires become our data. Yeah.
So
but
I think it's so cool.
Great. Yeah. Good.
Okay, well, is there any final thoughts, Nikki or Dr. Kingston, that you want to close with here? It looks like we're towards the end of our time here. And there was a note here that said the chat was disabled. I don't know how that happened. I'm sorry to everyone, but the Q&A is still there. If anybody has feedback, they can pop it in there. But you can also contact Dr. Kingston. She's got her contact information here if you do have more questions. So yeah, any final thoughts before I do my spiel?
Just let me ask, were there any comments in the Q&A about like a coffee with the Hope team, just that idea of that sort of that personal touch piece we were bouncing around a bit? Any feedback on that in the chat?
It sounds like one person said maybe monthly, like as far as frequency, but I don't think we got any other feedback because unfortunately we disabled the chat. I'm sorry. I don't know. I didn't do it. I think it's a great idea. I think having more resources for people to connect is valuable. We certainly find these mind and body talks sponsored by Alberta Blue Cross to be a great place for people to engage, but it's not so much of a sharing space most of the time, which is why I feel so grateful for those who were able to be so vulnerable and share their experiences, because I think it helped facilitate a really good discussion. And so I think if you could take that and run with that concept, I think it could be really impactful. It looks like feedback is coming in now. Yeah, connecting would be great. The coffee idea is good. many thanks for this presentation and for introducing us to this. Northern women need a lot of help. That's absolutely, yeah. So lots of good feedback there.
Lovely. So please feel free to reach out. There are a number of ways you can do that. I think in the whole platform, you can reach out within that, but we have a website, my phone number, again, you can text on that, and there's an email address. So lots of ways. Don't hesitate to reach out. Love to hear from you. We really mean that. So thank you. Should I stop sharing then?
Yeah, if you could, and I'll just pop up a quick slide here. Here we go. Perfect. So again, so much gratitude for all the vulnerability tonight, and to you, Dr. Kingston, for this discussion and for facilitating this platform and for all your research. I know certainly in clinical practice, it's very helpful to have resources for people that are, cost effective and readily accessible. And so really, really important work that you're doing. So thank you so much. I also want to thank Alberta Blue Cross for being our sponsor, and you all will get a survey that will be sent out to you to fill in. So there will be a feedback opportunity for participants, and we can share that with you as well, Dr. Kingston and Nikki. And if you do fill in that feedback form, you do get entered to win a $25 gift card, courtesy of Alberta Blue Cross. So if you get an email saying that you want a gift card, it's a real email, it's not spam. So make sure that you take advantage of that exciting offer. And we love feedback. We always listen to your feedback and do our best to integrate it into future What the Health discussions. If you would like to continue to support the Women's Society, we would love for you to consider becoming an active monthly donor. Anyone that signs up today to become a supporter is entered into a draw to win this Hope Box that I've got up on the screen here. And you can just scan the QR code, and that'll take you to our website where you can become a monthly donor. And it's thanks to your donations that we're able to put our resources into all kinds of exciting innovations and research, as well as supporting the Lois Hole Hospital for Women. So thank you so much to our supporters, and thank you to everyone for attending. There were a few donations that came in, which was fantastic. So we really appreciate that as well. And I believe that's a wrap on What the Health for now. We come back in September. So in those feedback surveys, if there are any topics that you're really keen for us to cover, please put those topics in that feedback survey, because we are always trying to fulfill the needs of the people that are attending with us. So thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you, Nikki. We just appreciate you so much and your expertise and your willingness to spend your evening with us. And thanks, Trish. Thanks, Alberta Blue Cross. And we'll see you all in September.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's been a blessing, and we have really enjoyed being here and interacting